let's go back in time to the year 1940 and German plans to invade France. This here is the Ebenemal Fort, a Belgian stronghold at the Albert Canal. This stronghold was meant to stop German troops on their way west by destroying nearby bridges, if necessary. This complex was considered one of the best fortifications of its time, alongside the Maginot Line and the Siegfried Line. Was it possible to capture this stronghold without a long siege? Well, it was a very difficult task, almost impossible. At least the builders thought that way. And it was, assuming the enemy will strike from the certain bearings and the strike will be done by the ground forces. The Germans proved that assumptions wrong. On 10th May 1940 at 4:30 am, 42 U-523M aircrafts took off. Each one was towing a DFS glider with paratroopers, almost 500 paratroopers in total. 10 of those gliders carrying around 90 paratroopers were meant to capture the fort itself, and the rest of the forces was dedicated to take control over the three bridges near the fort. It was the Assault Battalion Koch unit. They forced more than 1,000 defenders to surrender and captured two of the three bridges, opening the way west for the German 6th Army. Why was that possible? From the ground side, the fort was well protected. Here we have the canal on the right side. On the left, there is a river. Around the fort we can see barbed wire and trenches. But the Ebenemal fort had only one anti-aircraft station, having just 4 machine guns. So a weak spot. Reason number 1. No one suspected that the paratroopers would appear already inside the fort, landing right on top of the defenders using those gliders. Red dots on the map mark the landing spots. So, an element of surprise. Reason number 2. The paratroopers immediately attacked all entrances to the fort and blew up all gun turrets and cannons. To do that, they used a new type of explosive, hollow charges, more precise and powerful. Reason number 3. We can find similarities with this story when we look at the IT security or application security world. In my opinion, companies, when dealing with application security, try to rely on tools and products too much. The news often show us that there is usually something which was missed, and the bad guys still end up in the middle of someone's fort, like those paratroopers. In my opinion, companies tend to forget about the people, which I believe are the most important asset in the application security. Hi, my name is Mateusz Olejarka. I am Senior IT Security Specialist at Securing. Most of the time I do web application security testing. More and more I work also with software development teams to help them with application security in SDLC. I'm co-author of the Security Aware Developer Workshop, which is main reason behind this talk. I will share with you lessons I learned about the AppSec when I or my colleagues were giving this workshop. The concept behind the workshop is purely defensive. We do not teach developers how to pen test web applications, but we show them vulnerabilities, the cause, the effect, and then we let developers invent possible fixes and security improvements. We focus on the security awareness and fixing mindset. When I was creating the content, I had my concept how application security should look like in the organization. As a former programmer, I had the advantage of knowing how typical software development looks. With this concept, I went to my first edition 3 years ago, and this concept evolved quite unexpectedly during those 3 years. Based on the discussions that we had during more than 70 workshops already, I wanted to share what I learned about the AppSec from the developers. So, let's jump to lessons. Communication is bad. Lesson 1. This picture shows one of the most devastating attacks on US troops in history, the Pearl Harbor. Getting to bad communication. First, there were reports which indicated the possibility of an attack, which did not get the priority high enough. Second, there were orders issued which stated that the Japanese attack is possible, which did not mention Pearl Harbor specifically, so neither troops' disposition nor the readiness level was changed. Finally, the incoming Japanese planes were mistakenly treated as friendly bombers, which were supposed to appear in that time frame. During my journey as an application security consultant, I had a lot of complaints on the security people from developers. Let me quote a few. They do not understand how we work. They do not reply on our emails. You have to wait a long time until they eventually help you. They say, make it secure, but not how exactly. They speak their own TLAs, three-letter acronyms, that only they understand. Of course, security people are not the only ones to blame here. Developers are guilty also. If you, as a security people, want to work effectively with developers, it has to end. Maybe no ship will sink and no one will die if bad communication will continue, but it's toxic environment to work in anyway. Communication is a skill we all have to master. It's one of the most important skills in IT of the future. So you should drop your cubicles for a while, go out from your anonymous mailbox as security at something, and meet developers, play whatever game they play right now in the office, drink coffee, tea, or other poison of choice, or do that remotely now. Then, and only then, you can hear things, what they struggle with in AppSec. These stories might scare the shit out of you, or might not, but there's the only one way to find out, is just go and talk. Work on timing, respond quickly, queue tasks accordingly to their priority. And remember that others might not be as fluent in AppSec as you are, and communicate clearly with appropriate amount of details. Always ask questions if this or that is clear, and explain if not. That's the catalog of things you can do to improve communication, not only in application security, of course. Well, who knew? Security is not in my job description. This is the second lesson, the most surprising one for me. This picture represents a Polish anti-tank rifle, pattern 35. Rifle was a successful weapon capable to penetrate armor of any German tank used during the invasion of Poland from the distance less than 100 meters. Its deployment to troops was under strict secrecy. Weapon was delivered in wooden boxes disguised as measurement gear. On 15th July 1939, the order was issued instructing to train selected soldiers and officers with the weapon. Number of available rifles was around 3,500, which sadly was not enough. It was such a good weapon that the Germans included it in their arsenal, and those very rifles were used during the assault on Eben-Emael Fort. Why I mentioned the rifle? Because of the secrecy, the order to open those boxes which came late, and finally the small amount available. In a few companies I visited, I saw the security department seen by developers as an opaque, secret, big brother, which is always watching. The security guys are definitely watching our apps, they sometimes say. Hell no, it's a myth. I tried vividly to destroy it. Sometimes also, the application security was seen strictly as something which developers are not responsible for. I think this happens when you build your trenches of another department, compartment, whatever, and those anonymous mailboxes mentioned before. IT security department is not almighty though, it's probably understaffed and enemy forces have the advantage. It's hard to protect every place on ever-changing and dynamic battlefield. Key issue here is the developer's attitude, which is usually, I don't care, or I don't have time for security. Although I met developers which understood the need to work on the security side of their apps, they were badly outnumbered. I think it heavily depends on the company they work for as well. From my experience, there is a big difference between people building crypto exchange and people doing some internal apps. So, how do we fix this? You have to win their hearts and minds and recruit them to the application security calls. Developers, Scrum Masters, Product Owners, DevOps, all people involved, all of them. First, as a security people, you should explain exactly what you do and also what you do not. You should help and guide developers because developers are the main force behind the secure applications. How to spread this idea and this knowledge across a company? There is a variety of activities possible. Sit yourself nearby the developers in the office. Run internal events, either conference, hackathon, meetup, maybe even, again, internal bug bounty with small prizes. Explain what responsibilities you have and make other people understand it. Lesson 3 is about a supposedly silver bullet. During the World War II, American Air Force faced an interesting life and death problem. Not all bombers, not all fighters returned to base after a combat flight. On the picture, you can see the results of a study where aircrafts which returned were mostly hit. The solutions to the problem seems to be easy and straightforward. Put more armor on wings, on the hull, and there you go. Statistician Abraham Wald pointed out that planning improvements in armor based on the planes that returned from combat flights was boldly flawed, because the most sensitive components might be the ones that were not discovered in the study, because the planes which took damage there simply did not return to base. This is the survivorship bias when you take your data without considering if there can be some unknown reasons which make your dataset non-representative. So, do not focus on what was found, think also what could have been missed, and yet penetration testing or security testing is considered as enough to make an application secure. The truth is, it is not enough. Why? In all kinds of testing, not all bugs will be discovered. Most of the time, we do not test the whole application, so issues can stay undetected. Almost always there is something in the application which is not working, so it gets excluded from the scope. Let me ask you this. If you run a penetration testing of an application once a year, and on the other hand, you deploy changes and new features to production daily, how secure is it? Really? And fixing just before the production release can be costly too. To sum up, penetration testing is an important activity, but it should never be the only one. The idea is to push left to start security activities even before the new code is written. How to push left? Include security in the design phase using threat modeling. Include security in code review and testing. Try out various automated tools to help you. Maybe run an internal bug bounty. If not the offensive trainings I've attended, I probably wouldn't be here today with you. The training sparked my interest in ITsec, and I quit my job as a developer and moved into security. My case is an exception though. And getting back to World War II, what would you teach a paratrooper? Well, to parachute of course, and to fight effectively being surrounded by the enemy forces. To shoot as well is Combat 101, not only for a paratrooper, but you do not teach a paratrooper how to drive a tank, you teach how to destroy a tank. The same idea should be applied to developers' trainings. In my opinion, there are 4 most important aspects of a good application security training for developers. First, it should be developer-oriented, meaning it should take into account how developer works, which is mostly writing code in Visual Studio or other IDE. It should not focus on finding bugs from HTTP proxy, but on finding and fixing bugs from the source code level. Second, developers should be engaged, should actively take part in exercises and discussions, should exchange their experience with the group and the trainer, and not just sit there and listen, often distracted by the phone, laptop, and work. Third, training should contain tons of examples of security failures of other companies, lots of examples of vulnerabilities with consequences to make developers aware how things might go wrong. In cross-site scripting, it's not about this stupid pop-up, but actually the attacker can make actions on the user's behalf. And 4, flexible. Sometimes you cannot take out the whole team for 2-day-long workshop, so find one which lasts 1 day, or find one which lasts 2 hours for 4 consecutive days, to train the team without disturbing their day-to-day activities. Have you ever considered such training when each developer individually can stop it whenever she or he wants it? And finally, now it has to be online. For developers, I think it should be the same experience like watching Bandersnatch on Netflix. Okay, so now we know how the training should look like. Now we should see which training suits whom. The aim is to give proper fire to proper people. Offensive trainings make sense when the skills acquired are later on used in the organization. I did both offensive and defensive training, offensive with security champions, and they actually had the time to use those skills on their day-to-day job. I wouldn't recommend training the whole team this way though. Team or teams I would send to a defensive one, and I would also recommend buying access to secure coding platform for them to practice. And of course, let's not forget about new hires. The sooner their journey with application security will start, the better. And final lesson, compliance and security requirements. Here, from the picture done probably from an airplane, we can see several tanks located near the Rhine River during the World War II. It's very hard to see it from the picture itself, but looking closely at the tanks, all tanks look like the one on the right side. Inflatable dummy tank designed to confuse enemy with the location and size of your forces. You cannot see it from a reconnaissance plane. You must get closer, and close can be too late. The disposition of the forces is bad, you're not where you should be. I remember one workshop when manager said, we do things this way following an internal secure coding platform policy. And then suddenly, from the other side of the table, senior developer spoke, no, we don't do things like this. There's no time. Also, multiple times I heard, our app is secure, we do audits, we have best programmers on the market, we are compliant with this and that, we have security requirements written down and followed by our fabulous developers. Yeah. For those of you working with SaaS platforms, imagine a situation where some potential big customer knocks to your door and says, we will buy your services, but first, please kindly fill this 500 questions spreadsheet about your AppSec program. Better be sure that the answers you give are good, because we will check. I've seen this personally, and it's hard. Developers do not like filling spreadsheets. Hell, I don't like doing that either, but sometimes the security departments in their infinite wisdom give them guides to follow and spreadsheets to fill. Sometimes everything is fine only on paper. Sometimes even filling the spreadsheet is painful and requirements or questions are not designed for a given application. This has to stop. Compliance doesn't make an app secure, at least not the one on paper and not the one at all cost. If you want to make those requirements really implemented, you have to work together with developers with implementation and verification of those requirements. Next thing, the list of requirements must be written down in a language that developers understand, and they should be engaged in creating such list as well. To give you an example of such document, I recommend reading OWASP Top 10 Proactive Controls and comparing it to the classic OWASP Top 10 list to see the difference in the language. Okay, so let's jump to guide based on those 5 lessons I've told you about. Most important action is to work on the attitude. You're in this together. The code, the configuration are the battlefield for application security scores. To summarize what you can do to make applications more secure, I've prepared a short guide. First, improve communication and make direct connections with developers. Learn how developers work, learn them how you work. There's no silver bullet in security. Explain, again, what you can and you cannot do. Train people properly, make them security aware, show them examples of bugs, show consequences. Engage them in creating verifying requirements and successively in all actions related to application security. Secure software development lifecycle is an organizational change. So, support from top management, clear areas of responsibility, mutual understanding are crucial. And let me emphasize it again. People are most important part here. To paraphrase Winston Churchill, in the name of a AppSec cause, we shall fight in the design phase, we shall fight through implementation, we shall fight during testing, we shall fight till the final release, and we must fight together with developers to win the AppSec battle. We shall never surrender. Thank you for listening and catch me in a live Q&A session.